In this video, I'd like to show you how to reference, integrate, peak pick, and print a proton NMR spectrum. First of all, you want to get the spectrum on the screen that you're interested in analyzing. Expand the solvent peak if that's what you want to reference to. In this case, there was no TMS in my sample, it was run in chloroform. I'm going to expand the solvent by clicking the left-hand mouse button, dragging the mouse across it, and then letting it go. And I'm going to do that one more time to expand it so that it fills the screen. The referencing icon is a 0 with a peak over it. If I click this icon and then click the peak, the solvent peak, I can input the chemical shift for that peak. I'm going to set chloroform to 7.26 ppm. This peak is now assigned a value of 7.260. And the referencing routine has automatically exited. I can decrease my or increase my horizontal scale, or I can reset my horizontal scale by clicking the icon with the A on it. Now I want to integrate this NMR spectrum. Now if the data was processed automatically, then the spectrum will have already been integrated. The integrals may not be displayed on the screen here. If you want them displayed, you can right-click on the desktop. Under Spectra Display Preferences, you can check the boxes Integral and Integral Labels, Apply, and Close. This shows how the spectrum was integrated by the program itself. It did not a bad job. And if you're happy with these integrals, then you can proceed to printing the spectrum. If you're not happy with the integrals, then you can reintegrate the spectrum by, first of all, highlighting the region of the spectrum that you're interested in, expanding it. Click on the integration subroutine, which is the picture of the integral, and then click on this green button that says select or deselect all integrals, and then that selects all of the integrals. You can see the labels are highlighted with green on the bottom. Then you can click the red X button to delete all of those integrals. It's asking me if I'm sure, and I am. To reintegrate the NMR spectrum, you click on this icon which says define new region. So I'm going to click on that, and it gets highlighted in green when it's selected. To highlight a resonance, you start on the left hand side, click and hold down the left hand mouse button, drag it through the resonance, and then let go, and that integrates that peak. So click the left hold, drag, let go, click, drag, let go. And you go through the spectrum. I'm not going to bother integrating the solvent peak. I'm going to go through the peaks that I'm interested in the spectrum. Once the spectrum is integrated to your satisfaction, you can calibrate one of the integrals if you know how many protons the resonance represents. For example, this resonance represents 1 proton, so I can right-click that resonance, click on Calibrate Current Integral, and then type in the number 1. This integral is now given a value of 1, and all the others are scaled with respect to that integral. If I'm happy with the way the spectrum is integrated now, I can click on the Save and Return button. I'm going to lift up the NMR spectrum by using this icon with the double-headed arrow so that my integral labels are below the spectrum. I can scale the spectrum down so it's on scale. Now I'm ready to print the NMR spectrum. I can either print it with or without peaks. If I want, I would tend to print a proton spectrum without the peaks being labeled in the spectrum because there are so many that it gets very congested on the top with the labels. So to print this spectrum, you can simply display the region you want to print, such as this, and then issue the print command. If you want a specific region displayed, for example from 10 to 0 ppm, you can click on this E icon that says exact zoom and set the left hand limit to 10 ppm, the right hand limit to 0 ppm, and then you're ready to print the spectrum, and you get essentially what you see on the screen. You can go under File and Print. Alternatively, you can just type Control P at the command line. So when I do this, make sure that the print active window is selected and then click OK. Make sure your printer is defined where it says the name of the printer, and then click on print, and it will print out a copy of the spectrum. If you want a expanded region of the spectrum, for example this aromatic region, you could simply expand that region, blow it up vertically if you want, and then click on print, or alternatively type Control P on the command line, print the active window, make sure your printer is selected, click on print, and it will issue that print job, the spectrum. Now if you'd like to have a peak list of your spectrum, you can highlight the region of the spectrum that you're interested in picking the peaks for, scale the spectrum accordingly, enter the peak picking routine, which is this icon with a triplet with an arrow in the middle of it that says manual peak picking. The green or the icon here that says define new peak picking range is already highlighted. I can now click the left hand button and define a box, holding down the left hand mouse button, letting go, and all of the peaks within this box will be highlighted. If you don't get all of the peaks, maybe I didn't go too low enough with it, I can delete that and I can go lower with my peak picking box so I get everything that I'm interested in, and that will pick those peaks. If you don't get all the peaks, let's say that you want the carbon-13 satellites of these two lines because you want to measure the coupling constant, you can unhighlight this define new peak region, expand that region of the spectrum, blow it up vertically, dragging the mouse here, so that you see the carbon-13 satellites of these peaks, define new region, and now just define these peaks. And by doing this, you can define the very small peaks that you're interested in without defining all the noise that you're not interested in. And if you're happy with the way the spectrum is peak picked at this point, you can click on Save and Return. Now we can expand the vertical scale. Now we have all the peaks, and you can see why you may not want to print this peak list in your spectrum. But if you want a record of the peak list to analyze later, you can now click on Peaks, and if you want to print out a list of these peaks, you can at the bottom on the command line do Control P, make sure your printer is selected, and then click on Print. I won't bother doing that at the moment, I'll just cancel it. Click on the Spectrum tab again to go back to the spectrum. So that is how you reference, integrate, plot, and peak pick an NMR spectrum.